Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0. Welcome back to the channel. Enjoy the fanfic. And let's begin. Part 8. A winning effort begins with preparation. Joe Gibbs. It was at the dinner table that Dad announced a change in plans. He did it in his usual laid-back manner that belied the seriousness of the situation. After dinner, "We're going to start training," Dad said. "I didn't want to start teaching you this until you made Chunin, but given the circumstances, it might be for the best." Given that he'd spent most of our lives telling us that learning the clan techniques was a delicate process best done in carefully calculated stages, it was a bit of a surprise. Mum looked pleased with the announcement, but I was never quite sure she understood why Dad was so set on the stages. Intellectually, she knew, but she didn't use shadow jutsu, and that made a difference. General reference. Circumstances. Does he mean Orochimaru? If Orochimaru had targeted my team once, he might do it again. I suppose I could see that as something that would change his mind. Maybe. Teaching us what, exactly? Shikamaru asked, looking like he was having the same thoughts as me. You'll just have to wait and see, Dad deflected. Shikamaru slumped back into his chair. Troublesome, he muttered. Good, Mum said firmly. I'll work with you in the morning and your father has you at night. That gives you the afternoon to train with your sensei. Her look clearly said Shikamaru would spend that time training and not cloud watching. I smirked at him. I hope you're planning, Shikamaru. Shadow possession isn't going to do much against 1,000 bugs. He glared at me balefully. Shino was a pretty horrific opponent for him to face. Not only did free-moving bugs negate the effectiveness of shadow possession, Shino was pretty clever himself. I'd spent the afternoon writing up more profiles of the competitors for the finals. I'd copied Temari's profile out from memory, intending on plotting it out further when I'd decided I might as well draw up some for her brothers, and then Neji and Shino as well. That way I could just hand the whole thing out to everyone and not feel bad about helping some more than others. They weren't complete, and I'd have to look up Jiyuken and find out more specifics about what Shino could do, but I already knew enough to know that Shikamaru was at a disadvantage. There's a way around every obstacle, Dad said mildly. I wasn't sure if he was chiding me or reassuring Shikamaru. Probably both for the effort of one response. That was the Nara way. The days were long, so there was still plenty of sunlight after dinner. We traipsed out into the forest and were directed to gather firewood. Shikamaru and I exchanged looks and shrugged. Presumably there was a method to this madness. Dad led us to a small clearing in a hollow and we set up a fire on top of what looked like the remains of 100 other fires. There was ash and charcoal and a circular dead space amongst the grass. Wish I brought marshmallows, I said wistfully, looking at the dancing flames. It built slowly, first consuming the tinder then the twigs before catching the larger pieces alight. Shikamaru slumped backwards, lying down and staring up at the sky. Dad didn't say anything. Sometimes, clan training was like being given the pieces of a puzzle and having to put them together yourself. I wondered what pieces he was handing us now. The dancing flame caused the shadows to waver, overlap and change. But none of that was really new. When the fire was burning well, nearly roaring, Dad threw something in the flames that made the smoke spew out thick and heavy, hanging around the ground instead of rising into the sky. Shika and I both looked dubiously at the smoke. I hope there's not going to be any singing and dancing involved, Shikamaru sighed. That'd be such a drag. Anime and manga, idiots. It's not that kind of smoke, Dad drawled, though there was a smirk on his face. So what's it for, then? Shikamaru asked. It's not like you'd drag us out here for nothing. Look at your shadows and you tell me, he said cryptically, leaning back against a tree trunk and stretching his long legs out. It seemed like he was preparing to be here a while. We looked. And looked. It wasn't until I was stretching my arm out, wiggling my fingers in the smoke and watching my shadow do the same that I saw it. Fog shadow, I murmured, naming the phenomena. Shadows are three-dimensional. They occupy all the space behind an object that blocks the light. Usually, we only see two dimensions, when they hit the ground, but the smoke is heavy enough that it shows up. It was like watching dust motes dance in a sunbeam. Sort of. The opposite, really. That's exactly right, Dad drawled. So far, you've only been using your shadows to connect to the shadow of someone else and possess them. But the higher level clan techniques use shadows manifested as something solid. He demonstrated, creating a thin tendril with the shadow stitching jutsu and sending it punching through the trunk of a tree. Splinters went flying. General reference. I see, Shikamaru said thoughtfully. So instead of pushing our chakra into the shadow on the ground, it has to go into all of it. I could see an immediate problem. But the increase in chakra drain would be proportional to the increase in volume, it'd be too much. Even the shadow possession jutsu wasn't chakra light. Even if you only did it by surface area, it'd still. And now you see where our family's unique affinity with shadows comes into play. He leant backwards against tree again. Shadows are considered the negative double of the body, the alter ego of the soul, associated with the unconscious mind. So, it might be said that we have a spiritual affinity. There were numerous, slight differences between mental and spiritual energy. Both combined, formed half of chakra but originated from different sources. Mental energy came from learning and experiences, while spiritual energy was your willpower or personality. Once, I might have scoffed at the notion of spiritual anything, but I of all people could hardly deny that souls existed. How else could I be here? Oh, I see, I said, realization dawning. That's how we can force people to mimic us with the shadow possession jutsu. Because there's such a large mental component to it, we're not physically forcing them to move like a puppet jutsu would, we're using a sympathetic connection to convince their chakra that we're the same thing, and then when one moves so does the other. Sneaky. Insidious. But how does that help us here? Shikamaru drawled. It's not like you can change your spiritual energy, right? He asked, uneasily. That's what we'd been taught. Because chakra and the energies that compromise them were a catch-22 situation, if something affected your body then it would affect your physical energy, and if it affected your physical energy it would affect the body. The same was true with the soul, and really, did you want to mess with that? Change? Dad echoed. No, not exactly. You don't need to change. You already are what you need to be. You just need to synchronize properly. I wasn't exactly sure I understood. Or that I liked where this was going. The shadow possession is the first jutsu you learn for a reason. It's a gateway jutsu to the more complex clan techniques. However, it's very chakra inefficient. You can hold it for a minute, tops. But in order to make it more effective, you need to become more in tune with your affinity to shadow. Which is what leads us on to the next level techniques. Understand? I nodded, a little reluctantly. Hidden, Shikamaru murmured. Secret techniques. No wonder. Yes, Dad said simply. And most of the upper level jutsus are forbidden techniques. Not forbidden, in the common sense, as in, don't touch, but in the sense of ninja rankings. More, caution, extreme danger, use at your own risk. Which is why you will not even attempt this training without proper supervision. We gave our word easily. Neither of us were particularly willing to run the risk of causing ourselves damage by messing around with our own energy unsupervised. There wasn't any neat tricks or special procedure to doing it, which was good, because having to fight a manifestation of your inner self or something would have been far too cliché for me to handle. It was basically a kind of meditation exercise, activate our shadows, isolate the way the chakra felt where, when it was strongest, and attempt to increase that feeling. Simple in theory but with many problems in execution. Like, how exactly do you tell where it's strongest? How do you measure and replicate that? Was I the ratio of energies in the chakra? Presumably the affinities, since that was what we were talking about. I was pretty sure I achieved nothing by the time Dad called a halt. That's enough, he drawled. You won't learn this quickly. Certainly not by the Chunin exams. Shikamaru groaned. Troublesome. There's no point in rushing ahead and losing sight of where you're going, he said philosophically. That doesn't do anyone any good. The next morning, Mum made good on her promise to train us. She'd been doing so on and off ever since I came back from the Land of Waves, but Shika's inclusion in the finals seemed to have driven her to step it up a notch. The fact that Shikamaru didn't moan about it much let me know he was really kind of worried about his upcoming fight. After training, I slipped off to drop into the hospital to visit Hinata, and to check that Sasuke was still here. He was, but not allowed visitors, and the receptionist was fairly certain he was going to be released this afternoon. Good, he and Sensei hadn't left yet. Hinata looked far too surprised that someone was visiting her, and I made a mental note to stop by more often. Hi, Hinata, I said. Her room was pretty bland, but I spied a familiar set of flowers in pride of place on her bedside table. How are you doing? Ah, Shikako, she said, blinking at me. I'm fine. Given that she looked pretty awful and was in one of the more heavily monitored sections of the hospital, fine was probably an overstatement. That's good to hear, I said, not pushing the issue. We were all really worried about you after the prelims. Her fingers twisted together and she ducked her head. Yes. Kiba and Shino have already been to visit me. And Naruto, a light blush dusted across her cheeks. Is it true? Is he facing Neji Ni-san in the finals? I nodded. Yeah, the first match of the day. After what Neji did to you, Naruto isn't going to let him get away unscathed. At all. Neji might be good, but Naruto is surprising. I quirked a smile at her. She smiled back tentatively. He is very strong, she acknowledged. You've got good eyes, Hinata. I think you were the first person to ever see that. Even for me, it had been difficult to see what Naruto could be, and I had known what he would turn into. But Hinata had seen what he was. She flushed, though whether at the compliment or the topic, I wasn't sure. I'm not very strong. I squeezed her hand. Yeah, you are, Hinata. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. We got our asses kicked too, remember? But we got back up and kept fighting, and so did you. For now, you just need to heal so that when the next fight comes along, you can show them how much you've grown. She looked at me, expression indecipherable, then nodded. Why, yeah, that's right. I have changed. I smiled. Exactly. So, anyway, I know it's pretty boring in here, so I brought you a few of my books. I don't know if you'll like them, but I shrugged awkwardly. You can borrow them for now. There was a few fiction books and an encyclopedia on the medical uses of plants. It wasn't exactly exciting reading, but I knew Hinata made her own medical salve, so she might have liked it. I can bring others if you've already read these, just let me know. Thank you, Hinata said quietly. I haven't. Read these, I mean. It's not considered appropriate material for a hyuga, went unsaid. Anime and manga. I blinked. Seriously. I double-checked the books in my hands. Nope. Young adult adventure books. Nothing inappropriate here. Wow. They're not exactly high-class literature, but they're not that bad. Let me know if you like them. I've practically got a whole bookshelf full in my room. I stacked the books on the table and waved goodbye. It had been a short visit, but I had a boy to meet about some ramen. Naruto was already at Ichiraku when I ducked under the banner. Hey, Shikako, he greeted, boundlessly cheerful. You'll never guess what happened yesterday. What happened? I echoed, ordering a miso ramen. Weren't you supposed to be training with Ebisu-sensei? Yeah, he said sheepishly. I was. He defended at my sharp look. We went and talked to Hinata and everything. Then he said he needed to judge my skill level, or whatever, so we went to one of the training grounds to spar. He's actually pretty good, he added grudgingly. Kicked your ass, did he? I said knowingly. No. Well, maybe a little bit. But it's not like he used any jutsus or anything, so he's still lame. He scowled. And he said my chakra control was really bad and my taijutsu was sloppy. He was going to teach me water walking, but I already know that. He looked pleased at having exceeded expectations. Chakra control, huh, I mused. Did you get that seal removed? What? Oh, yeah, Kakashi-sensei took me to the old man after the prelims. He knew what it was, right away. No problem, he grinned. Well, he is the Hokage, I said. So what did you do instead? Well, he asked me if I'd ever fought while water walking. He twirled ramen around his chopsticks, almost pensively. I said no, so we went to this hot springs place to practice. The hot water kept busting up my clones whenever they fell in. He grimaced. It was really hot, and it's really hard to keep your balance when someone is trying to knock you around like that. I know, I said soothingly. Not that I'd ever fought on water, either. Though I'd probably do better than Naruto, who tended to learn something once and then call it done. He was getting better at that, but I doubted he had done much water walking since Wave Country. Yeah, so we were fighting and then there was this old guy peeping on the ladies' bath. He froze and cast a nervous look at me. And then the closet pervert, Ebisu, tried to tell him off, but he just got knocked out. Then the old guy said he was, like, some kind of toad sage or something, so I figured, he must be a ninja, right? Toad sage? That sounds like. Yeah. So I left some clones to keep training and watch out for Ebisu, and then I went to convince the pervy sage to train me. I figured, he had to know at least one decent technique. He scowled again, waving his arms about. He didn't want to, but I got him in the end. Hey, another one falls to the jutsu. General reference. Definitely sounds like. So you're training with both of them? I asked, amused. It was actually a really good idea. Yeah, Naruto said, sounding slightly less than enthused. He looked troubled. It's weird, maybe you can help me. Shoot. I agreed easily, wondering what was up. Well, it's like this, see, he said. The pervy sage, he keeps talking about how I have a lot of chakra, right? So he said I should learn how to learn how to increase the amount of chakra I can use. Or learn how to draw on Kyuubi's chakra, right? I guess, I said. But the closet pervert, Ebisu-sensei, he says that I should increase my chakra control so I don't waste so much chakra doing techniques. But when I tell him that I have a lot of chakra, he says it doesn't matter and that I'm still weaker. He trailed off quietly. So which one is right? I guessed at his dilemma. On the surface, they seemed like two contradictory approaches. Well, it's like this. You have a lot of chakra, right? But because your control isn't so good, you waste a heap of it instead of being able to use it in jutsu. So effectively, you really only have half the amount of chakra you seem to have. He nodded, showing that he was following. Now if you increase the total amount of chakra you have, then that half would increase too. But if you increased your control, you'd be using maybe 3/4 or even all of it instead. So by both approaches, you'd still end up with more chakra to use. And if I did both, I'd end up with twice as much. He grinned, making an intuitive leap ahead. That was Naruto. You couldn't be sure he understood and then he went and surprised you. I blinked. Yeah, that's right. Increasing your chakra control has other benefits too. For starters, it makes using jutsu easier. It does. Naruto practically shouted. Why didn't anyone tell me that? I nearly sweat dropped. It's in the name. Chakra control. The ability to guide and direct. Oh, never mind. You never noticed how Sasuke and I spent less time gathering our chakra when we're using jutsu? Well, Yeah, Naruto shifted uncomfortably. But, I just thought, so that's what it is, huh? Chakra control. Just thought we were better than you. I could read the unfinished sentence easily enough. For all his bravado, Naruto was surprisingly aware that he wasn't, really, all that good. He just never really admitted it and hated it when other people brought it up. Well, I said, picking up the napkin that was next to my bowl. This is a chakra control exercise. I emitted chakra gently to float it about 5 centimeters off my palm. It came easily, without even thinking about it. Behind the counter, Ayame gasped. I guess civilians didn't really get to see chakra being used a lot. Uruka-sensei showed us how to do this with leaves, remember? Not really. I think I skipped that day, Naruto admitted, squinting at it. I rolled my eyes. Right. It's like tree climbing. You constantly emit chakra, only instead of trying to stick to something, you use it to push it away and hold it steady. If you use too much, it'll just be thrown away. Like being pushed off the tree, Naruto said. Right. You should probably ask Ebisu-sensei for more control techniques. I bet he knows heaps of them, I suggested. No doubt Ebisu would be incredibly surprised at the request. Naruto's napkin fluttered through the air, landing solidly in his ramen bowl. Ah no, not in the ramen. I giggled. So what have you been learning? Well, the closet pervert has been working on my taijutsu. I don't know why, since he said that I wouldn't want to get in close to Neji. He looked at me expectantly. Your clones use the same taijutsu you do, I said, taking a stab at the reasoning. So if your taijutsu is better, their taijutsu is better and they'll be more effective. If you get in close, Neji can shut your chakra down like he did to Hinata and you won't be able to use any techniques at all. But your clones will disperse with a hit anyway, so. Anime and manga, so it doesn't matter if he shuts their chakra down, Naruto finished. Hinata was saying stuff about that. How they, shoot chakra out of their hands and it messes you up really badly inside. You can't even see it until they hit you. And then, their eyes can see through everything so you can't even hide. Creepy. They can also use it defensively, I said. To deflect things. I bet Neji practices with Tenten a lot, so he's probably pretty good at that too. Well, I'm going to be better. Naruto proclaimed. The pervy sage is teaching me this really cool technique. Really? I asked. What is it? Summoning jutsu. It's like this contract thing and then you can summon toads. Naruto said. I hid a smile. I've heard of them. Orochimaru summoned snakes, remember? You said you got eaten by one of them. Wait, that was a summon. That thing was huge. Sheesh. No wonder the pervy sage says it takes a lot of chakra. I can't even summon anything good yet. I keep getting tadpoles. Maybe more chakra control will help. I suggested. Hey, do you think that I could meet your pervy sage? He blinked at me. Sure. But why would you want to do that? The old guy is an awful lech. I just wanted to ask him a few questions, that's all, I said. Maybe tomorrow. That way I can bring all my seal workbooks. How much I'd be able to get out of him would be another story altogether. Worst came to, Naruto would probably pester him into answering at least one question. Sure, we were out by training ground 31 today, so, we'll probably be there tomorrow too. He shrugged. Sweet. Thanks. That would give me a chance to get over the huge roadblock I'd run into on my ceiling. Hopefully. Superstitiously, I crossed my fingers. Are you still working on your hidden in the mist jutsu? I asked. It won't help you much against Neji, since he'd be able to see through it, but it might help against some of the others. Like Gaara. Wet sand was heavier than dry. Probably more difficult to control, too. Of course, he'd have to have a decent water supply to use. He pursed his lips. You're right. Once I beat Neji, I'll have to fight Sasuke. The mist is good against him. Maybe if I get some clones to work on it while I'm with It'd be a good idea, I acknowledged. Your shadow clones are really handy, you know. He grinned, hand going behind his head. Yup. It's the most awesome technique ever. After lunch, I waved goodbye to him and headed off to the library for research. There'd be nothing there directly on the Hyuga and Aburame. I'd have better luck in our clan archives, but I'd already discovered that historical records could be a treasure trove of information. Added to that, Kikai might not have been listed anywhere, but they were beetles and I could extrapolate from general information. For example, like most insects, Kikai had waterproof exoskeletons. However, insects didn't have lungs. They breathed through a tracheal system that opened into the atmosphere through a series of holes all over their bodies called spiracles. If these spiracles were covered in water, an insect would drown just as surely as a mammal. Kikai were also susceptible to poisons and insecticides, though if a hive contained even a single beetle with a resistant mutation, then a skilled Aburame could quickly breed a resistant strain. Evolution on a reduced time frame. Smoke could sometimes affect the ability of the hive to communicate with each other by masking pheromones, which was why beekeepers used smoke. That had limited effectiveness here though, because the Aburame controlled their hive via chakra. Or something. Taking up entomology, Kakashi-sensei asked, lifting the cover of a book with a single finger. Handbook. Coleoptera. I jerked, pen scratching across my notepaper. I hadn't even noticed him arrive. Kakashi-sensei. His eye crinkled in good humor. Yar, inside voice. This is a library, you know. No, really, I asked dryly. I hadn't noticed. And you say I never teach you anything, Sensei said, looking mighty pleased with himself. I groaned. Sensei. He chuckled and pulled out a very battered-looking map. This is where we're going. I was slightly surprised that he had actually come to tell me, but glad for it. I eyed the spot he was pointing at. The map was very basic, but I was sure that on my more detailed map that location had altitude lines. There's a plateau there, right? And a cave system. My fingers touched the spot, then walked back to Konoha, measuring the distance. It's about 2 hours out. Easily able to be covered in a day, there and back. I'd worried that it would be further out. I'd tell you not to visit, Kakashi-sensei drawled. If I thought you'd listen. Instead, I'll tell you to keep the trips down to every 3 days. I was glad he didn't forbid it. I didn't like going against rulings and I especially didn't want to find out how far I could push Kakashi-sensei before he started retaliating. I had a feeling you only went that far once. When are you leaving? I asked. I'm supposed to pick Sasuke up from the hospital at 2, he replied. Anime and manga. I glanced at the clock reflexively. It's 4:30. Why so it is. He smiled. Yeah. Sasuke was going to try and kill him within a week. Speed is a great asset, but it's greater when it's combined with quickness, and there's a big difference. Tai Cobb. I made good on my promise to interrupt Naruto's training the next day, picking up my seal notebooks and scurrying out to the training fields. Truth be told, I was a little nervous. I'd never had to actually go and bother a complete, uninterested stranger for help before. Still, it wasn't like I was going to get a better chance. Shikako. Look, Naruto shouted, shoving something bright green in my face. My eyes crossed trying to focus on it. I did it. I summoned a toad. It was, well, a pretty small toad. Barely the size of one of his hands. But considering he'd only started learning how to summon creatures yesterday, it wasn't bad. Especially when you considered Naruto had several dozen shadow clones running around at the moment. In fact, I didn't even know if this was the real one. Anatomy. That's great, Naruto, I said smiling. Someone snorted. I wouldn't get so excited about it, kid. That's a pretty pathetic attempt. Shut up. I'm trying, alright, Naruto hollered back. I perked up, looking for the voice. There. A white-haired man crouching behind a screen of bushes, giggling every now and then. Is that? I asked. Naruto scowled. Yeah, that's the pervy sage. Are you really sure you want to meet him? The way he said it implied he couldn't imagine why anyone would. What's this? Jiraiya cried, suddenly there in the same way Sensei sometimes was, exactly where you didn't expect him. Someone wants to meet with the great Jiraiya. Is it a pretty woman? Oh, brat, you make me so proud. It's not like that. You pervert. Naruto exploded, waving his hands about and shouting at the top of his lungs. Why can't you be serious at all? I waited for the feeling of embarrassment or outrage to start up. There was some but. A lifetime ago something like that would have had me flushing and stammering. Now, I wanted to check over my shoulder to see who he was talking to. There was a feeling of disconnection, like the second's pause when I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the face looking back. Sometimes I still looked for a rounder face, a curvier body, lighter hair, paler skin, sometimes. Just enough to make me feel like this skin wasn't quite mine. So Jiraiya leering at it. It didn't feel like he was looking at me. It probably wasn't a very healthy way to feel, but it worked for now. Jiraiya-sama, I said, bowing low. Please. He cut me off before I even had a chance to ask. Oh, no. Just because I got suckered into teaching this brat doesn't mean I'm about to go around giving lessons to every kid he drags along. So you can just toddle off back home and do whatever it is young girls do. He giggled, thoughts drifting off on an obvious and obnoxious tangent. Nope. Not a chance. Sorry. He waved half-heartedly over his shoulder and turned to go back to his previous spot watching whatever he was watching. He obviously wasn't going to listen. Not without something to catch his attention. My thoughts raced. It was a gamble, because he was a ninja and a Sannin at that, but he was obviously fairly laid back and I was mostly sure I could get away with it. Shadow possession wasn't strictly an attack jutsu. And there was no way he'd regard me as an actual threat. My shadow lashed out. Jiraiya-sama, I said hurriedly, knowing it wouldn't pause him for long. Not if he didn't want it to. I've been studying seal work, but there is only so far I can get studying books without someone to ask for clarification. Please, could you answer a few questions? I dropped the shadow possession, knowing it would be better to let him go than have him break it. I definitely didn't want him to see me as any kind of enemy. He turned back around, and this time there was weight in his gaze. I raised my chin. I hadn't faltered before, under Orochimaru, and I wouldn't falter here. Anara, he muttered. Sorry, little girl, regardless of whatever clan tricks you've got up your sleeves, you just don't impress me. There was a shiver in the air. Not quite killing intent, but intent all the same. It made me highly aware that if he wanted, he could crush me and I couldn't do a thing. I'm a busy man, I don't have time to hold your hand and teach you how to make your own explosive tags or whatever kids want to do with seals these days. It was utterly dismissive. I couldn't stop the flash of anger in my eyes. I already know how to make my own explosive tags, I said, pulling my notebook out of my pouch. This one held all the different templates for the tags I used. There were about 20 different variations of explosive tags alone. What I want, what I need, to know is how to create my own seals. And how to apply them with a touch for use in combat. Nothing I have read even hints at it. I frowned just a little put out about it. Oh, I understood why ninja were so stingy with information, but it didn't stop being irritating. Jiraiya's look was reconsidering, and he snatched my notebook out of my hands with a lightning-fast movement. He said, flicking through the pages. You'll never be able to seal like that using mass-production seals like these. Jiraiya shook his head. You have to own your seals. Mind and soul. Look, the reason no one else can do the fourth Hokage's Flying Thunder God technique isn't due to any safety seals or secrecy seals, no matter what anyone else says. It's because he invented his own damn branch of sealing to make it work. I blinked. Look, seals are all about influencing the world with your chakra. The ink, the symbols, it's all trapping. Important, yeah, but, he flicked his fingers back and forth. But, then why are there so many distinct branches of sealing? I asked, bewildered. He laughed. People only think in so many different ways, kid. You live long enough, you'll work that one out. Oh, I blinked. That made so much damn sense. So I guess this is useless then. I looked down at the second notebook I'd pulled out. Jiraiya quirked a brow. I was comparing the 12 most used branches of sealing arts. Method, theory, range of uses, results, points of conflicts. I trailed off. Sealing was a matter of putting your own thoughts, own ideas, to paper, and then making them real. No wonder nobody used the same process. Oh, there were bits cut from here and there, bastardizations of this technique or that, overlaps, crossovers, wild leaps of imagination. Every seal master created their own language. Not out of arrogance, not to mess with everyone else, or to keep their seals secret, but because they had to. Let's see it, Jiraiya said. I handed it over, mind still whirling. That new perspective changed everything. Sealing was so unpredictable, so arbitrary, because people were. In computer terms, the seals weren't the hardware, they were the interface. Well, you completely missed the point, Jiraiya said slowly. I nodded along. But, do you mind if I read through this? A large part of being a seal master is working out what other people have done. I'll correct any mistakes you've made. Yes, of course, Jiraiya-sama, I said automatically. I wasn't quite sure what the look he gave me meant. It was long and judging and lacked any of the lechery he usually emitted. Probably wondering how I'd missed the point so badly. Damn. I don't get what you're talking about. Naruto complained, crossing his arms. I jolted. I'd mostly forgotten he was there. You knew you were preoccupied when you forgot about Naruto. I just did something dumb, that's all. I smiled at him sheepishly. But that just means I have more training to do now. Sorry for interrupting your training and all. Naruto shrugged the apology off. Nah, don't worry about it. It's not like the pervy sage does anything but watch those girls, anyway. Hey, maybe you can help me with this jutsu. I blinked. Of course, Naruto. You know I'll always help you. What are you having problems with? I'm doing this summoning jutsu, right? But all I keep getting are these tadpoles and tiny frogs. I want to summon a really big one, like the pervy sage did. Naruto exclaimed. Okay, I said slowly. So how does this jutsu work? Naruto demonstrated. I build up the chakra, and do the hand seals and summoning jutsu. He slammed his hand down onto the ground, chakra smoke billowing out. Ribbit. Ah, man. That's another tiny one. The frog was slightly larger than the one he'd shoved into my face at first, but not by much. I said. I'd felt the build-up, and I'd felt the chakra that he'd actually used in the jutsu. The difference was pretty damn big. Let me try something. I'm going to use my diagnostic jutsu on you while you do the summoning jutsu, okay? I summoned medical chakra to my hands and placed them on his shoulders. It took me a few seconds to zone in on his chakra system. Okay, do it again now. Using my chakra sense, I could get a fairly decent picture of his chakra usage, but this jutsu was designed for close-up investigation of the body. Naruto's chakra built up and up and up, so much it must have been almost painful, then just fizzled, as he tried to do the jutsu, only small amounts drizzling down his arm and into the summon. I drew back and considered. Well, he asked. Give me a second, I said, biting my lip. What on earth was going on here? It was bad chakra control, sure, but let me see you do a shadow clone, I said, creating more medical chakra. Naruto didn't even question why. He built up his chakra again, Faster and easier this time with a more familiar jutsu, and then it was snatched away, twisted into the air to form a new body. I had a sneaky suspicion. A transformation. Again, his chakra built, and again it twisted outwards, reforming his body. He didn't channel it. There was more than one part to chakra control. You had to mold it, creating a balance of physical and mental energy. Then you had to manipulate it into doing whatever you wanted. Naruto wasn't great at molding chakra, being inefficient, but seemed to be much worse at manipulating it. His best techniques were ones that seemed to just take the energy given to him and manipulate it themselves. I drew back again. He looked at me expectantly. Okay, let's try this, I said, deciding. Build up your chakra. He did, closing his eyes to concentrate. His chakra built until it was nearly visible, radiating from his skin. I winced. Gods, it was just steaming off him. What a waste. Now do the hand seals, but don't do the summoning yet. Slowly his hands moved through the seals, his face scowling in concentration. Now move the chakra in your hara down your arm. Naruto blinked, his eyes open. I touched his stomach where the bulk of the chakra was. This is where you're building your chakra, right? Now, you need to move it up your shoulder and down your arm. I traced my hand down the path it should have followed. Naruto grimaced as he tried to follow. He was just bleeding chakra at an amazing rate. Now do the summoning bit, I said, as it reached his hand. Anatomy. Summoning jutsu, Naruto said, biting his thumb and slamming his hand down on the ground. Chakra dispersed. Yo, a small orange toad said. It still wasn't very big, maybe the size of Akamaru, but it was an improvement. I did it, Naruto exclaimed. That's super cool. But, I don't get why it worked now but not before. He looked at me hesitantly. Well, I said, when you're tree walking or water walking, you build the chakra in your feet, right? Naruto nodded. Right. Kakashi-sensei said that was the hardest part of the body to gather chakra. He looked pleased with himself for remembering. Exactly, I beamed. So if you use your feet for those techniques, what are you using for this one? Naruto blinked, then stared at his hand that still had blood smeared across the fingertips. My hand. So I should have been molding chakra in my hand all along. Oh man, why didn't I think of that? He smacked himself in the forehead. Ebisu-sensei probably talked to you about chakra control, right? And manipulating it? I asked. He said I wasn't any good at it, Naruto confirmed mulishly. You lose a lot of chakra between molding it and using it in the jutsu. So you need to focus on moving it where you want to go, right? I asked. That's probably what more chakra control will help you with the most. Right. I'm going to get this jutsu down. Believe it, Naruto said firmly. Here I come. Summoning jutsu. I smiled. I'll leave you to it, then. I headed back to the clan grounds, head buzzing with new information. I wanted to get started on sealing right away, but I also wanted to finish drawing up my analysis sheets on the other genin. That way, I could pass them out to my friends tomorrow. So instead of heading back to my room, I set course for the clan archives. The Nara clan collected information. There were 4 buildings on the clan property that had secret basements converted into libraries. One was open to anyone in the clan, one to genin, one to chunin, and the last only to those who had achieved junin rank. I suspected there was more that were too secret for me to even know of. That wasn't even counting the secret cache of information that each ninja would likely compile, to be added to the clan archives after their death, provided the clan head agreed, of course. We collected information like Uchiha collected techniques. Some of it bizarrely specific, like my great-uncle who had gone to lengths to classify precisely the kind of parasites that our deer collected. Of course, that then led to medical treatments to remove them, so it wasn't useless. Other information was very broad. Other information still was likely stuff other people would like to keep secret. Like, For example, fighting styles of other clans. At genin level, I didn't have access to that much about the Aburame or Hyuga, but it was enough. Some of it, I had already puzzled out yesterday at the Konoha library. Some of it sparked more ideas, and I wanted to go and visit Hinata again. I didn't know if she'd talk to me like she would to Naruto, but it was worth a shot, particularly if she knew I was asking on his behalf. I took flowers this time, and even grabbed an extra one to give to Lee. We weren't exactly friends, but we had made it to the same stage of the Chunin exams. He was an orphan, so I didn't think he'd have many people visiting him, and there were rumors going around that he was badly injured enough to end his ninja career. I doubted that Rock Lee had the common sense to let something like injuries stop him from doing what he wanted. I signed in at the reception desk, indicating who I wanted to visit. Rock Lee, the nurse asked before sighing. Please, if he's not in his room, let someone know. We've already had to drag him back inside twice today. I blinked. He tries to escape. Worse. He keeps trying to train. She sighed again. It's only aggravating his injuries, but he just won't listen to sense. That sounds like Lee, I admitted. It was a very awkward visit. Lee was very polite. I wasn't sure that he knew how to be anything else, but we didn't have much to talk about once I'd wished him well. The only thing I could think to talk about was the Chunin exams, and that was just a bit too insensitive for me. So I put the vase of flowers on the, previously empty, beside table and fled the room at the first opportunity. Hey, Hinata, I said, knocking gently on the door to her room. How are you? She blinked, looking up from the book she was reading. I recognized it as one of the ones I'd left here yesterday. I'm well, she said softly. It's nice to see you again. I smiled. I feel like I have a lot of time on my hands right now, I admitted. Being that I'm still healing too. Because I was still healing, I was only supposed to be doing light exercises. Though, I'm pretty sure that what I was considering, light exercise and what the medics actually meant by light exercise, were very different things. I was keeping everything chakra enhanced during training, so chances of rebreaking anything were very slim. Hey, I was keeping a careful eye on it. It's not like I liked having broken ribs. Oh, I see, Hinata said. Have you been doing much? I shrugged, sinking into the visitor's chair. Mostly visiting everyone else, I admitted. Seeing how everyone is getting on and all. I saw Naruto this morning, I teased, dangling the information in front of her. She brightened. You did. How is he? How is he doing? I hummed. Not bad, actually. It's really too soon to say how much he'll have improved by the exams, but it's bound to shock a lot of people. She smiled, a little bit bashful and a little bit proud. That's Naruto. I grinned. Sure is. Hey, Hinata, do you think you could answer some questions for me? I asked. I understand if you can't, with clan secrets and all. She twisted her fingers together. I can try. I smiled. Thanks. Really. I know that the Byakugan can see through things, so my question is, can you see underground? Hinata blinked. Yes, but, it's very difficult to walk when you can't see the ground. Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. So you don't tend to look down with the Byakugan unless you already suspect an attack. She nodded. So while you probably could surprise a Hyuga with an attack from below, you'd only get away with it once. It might slow them down a bit to have to constantly check where the ground was, but not that much. Second question, can you see through the transformation jutsu? She frowned, as though thinking about it. We can tell that there's chakra, but it depends. So if someone transformed into, say, a kunai or something, it would have a chakra system, so I'd know that it was a person, Hinata confirmed. There was a jutsu that created copies of kunai, but I had no idea how it went. But if Naruto created cloned kunai before battle, then they would all have chakra. Besides, Naruto's clones were chakra constructs and his transformation jutsu changed their shape completely instead of just projecting an image over top of the real thing. Thanks, Hinata, I murmured. I know it's kind of awkward for me to ask, but I really think this will help Naruto. I'm glad to help Naruto, she said softly, looking down. You're a good person, Hinata, I reassured her before changing the topic. So how are you liking those books? The next day I packed a cooler bag of food and headed out for Sensei's training camp. It was 2 hours run at a fast lope, a ground-eating, efficient pace. If I was willing to spend chakra I could probably cover it faster, but I didn't know if Sensei expected me to join in on the training, so I wanted to conserve energy. Training and certification. Sasuke was running through some taijutsu drills when I arrived, with Sensei standing lazily to the side. I guess that was one benefit of camping in the same place, it didn't give Sensei a chance to be late. Just in time for lunch. Kakashi Sensei said, clapping his hands together. Sasuke blinked, baffled. Shikako, what are you doing here? I giggled at the look on his face. You didn't think I was going to let you go for a month with no one but Kakashi Sensei for company, did you? Who knows what that would do to you? Hey, Sensei objected good-naturedly. Sasuke smirked. I can only imagine. Right. I nodded, sharing the amusement. I brought food, I said, unpacking bentos and thermoses. There's some extras for dinner, too. Thanks, Sasuke said quietly, taking the box. I think I'm sick of ration packs and protein bars already. I smirked. 1 day down, 28 to go, I teased. He shuddered. It was a quiet lunch, but amiable. None of us were exactly talkative people, but we were definitely comrades. Are you sticking around? Sasuke asked me. I shrugged and looked at Sensei. Kakashi Sensei. There was a glint in his eye. Why? I have the perfect idea. How about a race? I'll time you two. Where to? Sasuke asked interested. Oh, I think to the edge of the plateau, down the gully to the last spire and back will be plenty far enough, don't you think? Sensei said innocently. I squinted. I can't even see the last spire. Kakashi Sensei just chuckled. Sasuke shrugged and looked at me. You up for it? I nodded. Sure. I should be fine to run. Kakashi Sensei drew a line in the dirt and we both dropped into runner's crouches behind it. Ready, steady, go. We both exploded off the starting line. Chakra flared in my limbs as I ran, boosting my speed. I used it to increase the amount of friction I could grab on the ground, instantaneous grip and release helping me eke out just that bit more speed. The ground flashed past underneath my feet, almost as if I wasn't touching it at all. It was exhilarating. I didn't look for Sasuke, content to know that for now he was behind me. There were a lot of spires, looming out of the ground as we passed through the canyon. It meant we had to weave around them, which would have been easier if we were going slower. And then they ended. The stretch of sandstone and open space was quite the sight, if I'd taken the time to observe it. I didn't really, sticking one foot to the ground and crouching to pivot around it using my forward momentum to swing around to face the direction that I'd just come from. I was suddenly quite glad for my chakra enhancements as I'd underestimated the G-forces that would result from the action. Hinduism, but it did give me a very tight spin, and a straight shot past Sasuke back to the starting line. 10 minutes and 27 seconds, Kakashi Sensei said idly as I cruised over the starting line. I started to bleed off speed, sliding over the ground. And 11 minutes 15 seconds for you, Sasuke, he added, snapping his stopwatch closed. I considered the difference between adult and child, Genin and Junin. So it'd take you, what, 3 or 4 minutes, Sensei? I panted. Slightly less, probably, Sensei agreed. Sasuke groaned, flopping down onto the ground. I'm never going to get fast enough. Now, Sasuke. It's not time to give up yet, Kakashi-sensei admonished. I caught sight of something I hadn't noticed before. Are you wearing weights, Sasuke? He hined in acknowledgement. We probably won't get far with the weights method, Kakashi-sensei said. It relies on time to adjust to them, which we don't have. Mostly we'll be working on using chakra to enhance your speed. We should be able to get you up to Lee's speed, at least, by the end of the month. I wondered if I should invest in weights. Maybe not. They only affected a certain part of the body, and only along with gravity. Maybe if I looked into making a resistance seal. To increase the effort needed by all parts of the body, like trying to move in water only without the buoyancy. I could already tell that I hadn't been as chakra efficient during the race as I could have been. Not using chakra like that meant I wasn't exactly used to it. It had its benefits, but I'd have to work on using it sometimes or I'd lose that advantage. Straight line running isn't going to cut it though, I said, thinking out loud. Fighting probably involved very short distance sprints and rapid changes of direction more than long distance races. Sensei's eye glinted again. I was starting to think it signified sadistic amusement. That's right. Next up, agility drills. Or, I guess we could call it, dodge. Now there's a look in your eyes, like black holes in the sky. Pink Floyd. I sat, drawing up explosive notes as I thought. They were standard Konoha design, not the most efficient, not the biggest or the most intense, but I was giving these away and no ninja wanted to use an explosive note they didn't trust. So standard Konoha design it was. I'd made these so many times that the motions were as familiar as breathing, the calligraphy brush steady between my fingers. There was something infinitely graceful about the slide of the ink over paper, and I wondered if this was why some people spent years mastering the art in order to write that one perfect kanji. But mostly, I wondered about seals. How to transcribe my thoughts without first converting them to words. How to convey impressions and feelings and intent and will. Seals could do anything, conventional wisdom said. The trouble was in getting them to do it. People only think in so many different ways, kid. Except, thoughts were shaped by society and beliefs and values and all kinds of things. My complete and utter failure to see the point had just highlighted the fact that, while I was integrated in this land, sometimes I was still other. Not just that, but sometimes, more often now, after starting to meddle with our spirit energy, sometimes I had the disquieting feeling that all my thoughts had a shadow. An intangible mirror copy just out of reach. None of the sealing styles had ever really made intuitive sense to me. That's the whole reason I had tried to puzzle them out by decoding them. I was starting to see why. But, it was one thing to say, create your own seal array, it was another to actually try and do it. How could I possibly create something like that? Everything else I had ever learned had been learned by rote. This technique does this. Do this and that will happen. It was kinda intimidating. I started by pulling out all of the pieces I had used before and seeing which ones made intuitive sense to me. Which techniques worked the best. There was a lot of crossover in the sealing arts, a lot of, generally accepted, ways of doing things. I didn't have to reinvent the wheel, after all. I just had to find the bits that worked for me. Actually, now that I thought about it, sealing reminded me a little of studying electricity in physics class. You had to draw a complete circuit, regardless of what you included in it, input, output, measurement, resistors, capacitors, the concepts were remarkably similar. It had been a long time since I'd done physics. Alright, maybe I should start with something simple. My own explosive tag seals. I already knew the theory behind the combustion and I'd studied every variation on them that I could find. And being able to set explosives with a touch would be beyond handy. I nodded to myself and finished the tag I was drawing. Then stared at the huge pile that had materialized while I had been thinking. Got a little carried away. Shikamaru asked dryly. Don't be silly, I said airily. There's no such thing as too much explosives. Granted, explosive tags were usually fairly expensive and most ninja never used more than 1 or 2 per fight. But since I made my own, that didn't matter to me. Just what are you planning to blow up? He asked. Because I need to know when to make sure I have an alibi. I scoffed and picked a fifth of them off top the pile. Here, I said, handing them to him. I'm making sure everyone is restocked. You need any specific tags? Shikamaru hemmed thoughtfully. I'll let you know. I shrugged. I think I'm going to make some water storage scrolls, later. You want some? Could come in handy, Shikamaru agreed. That's what I thought. Against Gaara, against Shino, Naruto could use them for his hidden in the mist and in combination with his lightning jutsu. I couldn't help my friends fight, but that didn't mean I couldn't give them the tools they needed. Storage scrolls, a personalized explosive seal, some kind of training resistance seal. I was building myself quite a list of things that needed to be done. I sighed, and pulled out a new notebook. I sorted them according to what they contained, which meant I had a fair few half-finished notebooks floating around, but it was a better system than putting everything in one book, which would mean having notes of medical jutsu next to an analysis of chakra recomposition next to a seal array. Hey, Naruto, I called, sliding into Ichiraku when I caught sight of the familiar orange jacket. I hadn't intended to come here, but, hey, whatever. How's training? He jerked. Hey, Shikako, I didn't see you there. He shrugged. It's going okay. I mean, the toads are cool and all, but the pervy sage just keeps wanting me to draw on. I mean, use more chakra and stuff. And Ebisu-sensei is boring, but I can kinda tell I'm improving. He grinned foxily. And boy was he surprised when I asked for more chakra control techniques. I laughed. I bet he was. So this is the real you. Not a clone. Of course. Clones don't need to eat, he said. I know, I teased, smirking. But I wouldn't put it past some of your clones to sneak off to eat ramen. The way he flushed said I probably wasn't too far off the mark. Here, I said, handing over an envelope with his share of the explosive notes in it and a copy of my analysis. These are for your fight. You should probably go over the information with Ebisu-sensei. Just be careful not to lose it. There's stuff on there that you don't want just anybody getting their hands on. Naruto glanced at it. Hey, these are like Kabuto's nin info cards. I twitched. It is not. It's a detailed report on your opponent's skills, strengths and weaknesses with potential strategies to take advantage of them. It's nothing like. Okay, sorry. Naruto said, waving his hands back and forth. It's great. Thanks. I sat back, huffing. And here I was going to tell you about this awesome new idea that I had about your shadow clones. I guess you don't want to hear it. No. Wait. Yes, I do. Please tell me. Naruto begged. Well, I guess he hadn't meant anything by it. Oh, alright. Are you free for a bit? Or send a clone with me? I'll come. What is it? He asked eagerly. Is it a super cool move that'll help me defeat Neji? It might be, I said. It's just an idea. We'll have to see how it works. Naruto was very eager to see what I was talking about. I guess describing something as a cool idea was only just slightly below cool jutsu, especially since it seemed to use his favorite technique. We headed to one of the simpler training fields, which was just basically a kunai range with posts. So, I said, why your clones are transformed into things, can they still see and hear? Yeah, that's how we use the spiders, right? Naruto said, frowning a little in confusion. I hummed. Yeah, but what if it was something that didn't have eyes and ears? Like, say, a kunai. Well, I don't know, he confessed. Let's try it, I suggested. He made some clones, which dutifully turned themselves into kunai and then dispersed. It's like, Naruto wavered. Kinda like seeing and hearing, but not really. It wasn't a very clear explanation, but I thought I got the point. But you can tell what's going on, right? He nodded firmly. Good. They are chakra constructs, so I expected something like that. Even when they look like they have eyes and ears, they don't really. Okay. So next question. If a clone is transformed into a kunai and then clones himself, do they come out as kunai? That one is easy, Naruto said confidently. Yup. I thought so, I said. Now it's demonstration time. Give me a clone transformed into a kunai and be prepared to duplicate 10 times when I yell, now. Naruto frowned, but did as I asked. I don't really get it, he said. Where's the cool bit? Watch this, I directed. I threw the kunai straight for the posts and waited. Now, I yelled, a split second before it hit. 10 kunai thunked into the wood. They held for a second, then dispersed, leaving behind 10 holes. Strange that shadow clones could be solid enough to do damage but not take it. I suspected it had something to do with the fact that pain disrupted chakra. Which might explain why a focused and expectant clone could take hits better than a surprised one. Now imagine if that was a person, expecting one kunai and getting say, 10. Or 20. Or 100, I said. And then say, even if you missed, your clone kunai could just wait around until Neji, or whoever, stepped near them and turn back and knock them out. Or, I glanced at Naruto. His eyes were very round. But can't the Byakugan see through the transformation jutsu? He asked slowly. Maybe, I admitted. So maybe he'll know there's something off about your kunai. But if you make them before you go into the arena, he won't know what. And it's like Lee said to Sasuke, isn't it? It doesn't matter if you can see it if you can't do anything about it. Oh, Neji would probably be able to deflect hundreds of weapons, but this didn't give him the warning of a flight path when one suddenly doubled into hundreds. He might have Kaden, the heavenly rotation, but that was chakra intensive and I doubted he could use it often. You've got to work on the timing, though, I cautioned. The closer you can get before they replicate, the less time Neji has to react. You can count on it. Naruto said, determination beginning to shine. I won't rest until I've got this down. He summoned another clone and it transformed even as he reached for it. I stepped back to watch. The days drifted away, slowly at first, then faster and faster, often with little to show for their passing. I studied, I trained, I spoke to the others. And every 3 days I packed up lunch and went to make sure Sasuke was still alive. I struggled with the seals. Oh, I could make explosive seals by the dozens, functional seals, efficient ones, but they still weren't right. Then, one afternoon, I stared down at the paper in my notebook and wondered why it suddenly seemed so obvious. It was simple. A triskelion, 3 spirals that joined to form the sides of a triangle, with the kanji for blast in the center and the details, radius, intensity, timer, scribed out in English with adjustable numerical attributes. It was remarkably simple, yet highly adaptable. Bigger explosions, smaller ones, extreme heat, delayed activation, I could change it all, something that sometimes annoyed me with standard tags. Now to make sure it works, I said thoughtfully. It didn't look like any other explosive seal I'd ever seen, apparent from the single central kanji, but that was kinda the point. I drew out a few seals, took them down to the training fields and watched in elation as they blew up. I wanted to cackle madly. I wanted to run around and show people what I'd done. Naruto. I could show Naruto. No, wait, I murmured to myself. First, I wanted to learn how to apply it. Learn how to use it without having to draw up the ink first. It's just trappings, Jiraiya's voice echoed. You have to own your seals, mind and soul. I remembered Naruto, slamming his hand down into the ground, the delicate webbing of black ink spreading from his fingers. What's the correlation? I closed my eyes and focused on the pattern of the seal, filling in the numbers I wanted. I slammed my hand down onto the ground, a surge of chakra and a twist of my will be done. Beneath my hand bloomed the ink of my explosive seal, perfect and lethal. Bugger, I said. I dove to the side. The explosion sent me tumbling and I rolled across the grass, laughing breathlessly and unharmed. Didn't quite think that one through. Note to self. I was giddy with success. For all that it was such a small thing, almost unnecessary even, it was still progress beyond what I'd hoped for. Naruto, I called excitedly, searching the training field that he'd last occupied with Jiraiya. Naruto was standing on the head of a giant frog, easily one the size of a small cow. He perked up when he saw me. Oh, hey, Shikako. Have you come to talk to the pervy sage again? I beamed at him. No, I wanted to show you something. Really? He jumped down to land beside me, the toad dismissing itself in a puff of smoke. I wondered if they were getting annoyed with him. Is it another cool technique? It's something I learned to do, I said. Oh, just watch. I stooped down and grabbed a small rock, one just the size of my fist, off the ground. The twist of chakra and willpower came easily, again, as if something had just clicked. And because I was showing off, I upped the intensity of the explosion. Ink webbed across the rock. I my arm back and threw it high into the air. When it reached the peak of its flight, it exploded, a muffled whump of fire, burning almost white hot at the center. I beamed at Naruto, proud as anything. That was amazing, Naruto shouted, grabbing me and spinning me around. It was, you just, then it exploded. I laughed. I wasn't entirely sure Naruto understood what I'd just done, but that was the nice thing about Naruto. He'd be excited with you anyway. Oi, brat, quit messing around with explosives. You scared all the ladies off. Jiraiya popped up, aggrieved. Oh, it's your lady friend. Come to see Jiraiya again, he. He leered. Don't say it like that. Naruto shouted. Jiraiya-sama, I said, bowing a little. Sorry for disturbing you. I was just showing Naruto what I'd managed to do. And here I thought you said you already knew how to make explosive tags, Jiraiya said shrewdly. Yes, I do. I mean, that's why I started with them because I already know how. That line of logic seemed better in my head. Do it again, Naruto instructed, shoving a rock into my hand. Watch this, pervy sage, it's awesome. I did so. Naruto's eyes followed the explosion, but Jiraiya's rested on me, heavy and inscrutable. Well, it's a good thing you showed up, anyway, Jiraiya said, pulling out a familiar-looking notebook. How long have you been working on this? Since just after graduation. He gave me an incredulous look. What? We had a mission to do as well, I added defensively. I hadn't had that long to work on it. That's not what oh, never mind. How many more of these notebooks do you have? He asked. A few. I work on stuff other than sealing as well, you know. The rest are mostly encrypted though. I noticed that, Jiraiya said. The look he gave the book said he would very dearly like to work out that code. Whether because he wanted to read what it said, or simply as a professional code breaker I didn't know. Why isn't this one? I didn't encrypt that book because it's an analysis. I wanted to have it put in the clan library later. I looked down. It was pretty arrogant to think I deserved to have anything entered into the clan library, but it wasn't like it was a creation of mine. It was just collating and analyzing the work of others. Anyone could have done it. The rest are in code. And I don't really want to give you a chance to break it. Some ninja were scary smart. There were people who probably could rediscover an entire language based on whatever clues they could find in my notebooks. And there would be some seal patterns, diagrams, graphs, there was always something. And I wasn't even entirely sure no one spoke English anywhere. Certainly, it wasn't a major language of any of the elemental nations, but all it took was a small regional town to have their own dialect, or even worse, outside the elemental nations, and all of a sudden there would be massive attention focused on me. Fair enough, Jiraiya said, scratching his chin. Well, we might as well go over this now. Brat, get back to work. He flicked the notebook over, revealing that he'd stuck post-it notes all throughout the book, covered with cramped handwriting. Now see here. There was a reason that Jiraiya was considered a seal master. Possibly the seal master, depending on who you asked. I was getting just a very small glimpse of that, with his additions and corrections and embellishments to my analysis. I had thought that I had gone into detail, but there was so much more. The fact that he was teaching it to me, sharing this knowledge, was so much more than I could have hoped for. I'd basically accepted that tipping my entire perspective upside down was the most that I was going to get out of him. Maybe get him to answer a few more questions. This was a treasure trove. It was a good day. So of course, it couldn't last. Pride comes before the fall and all that. I was still giddy with success when we settled in for our nightly training meditation. 2 weeks of this and nothing to show for it. But Dad cautioned us to expect nothing else and not to get anxious about it. I don't know what it was. Maybe because I wasn't as calm and bored as usual. Maybe my shift in perspective. Maybe a lot of things. Because when we settled in, when I started looking into my shadow, I saw it. Just a tiny spot. A spark of darkness where the shadow was so much greater and deeper than that around it. The shadow was so dark it seemed solid, a grasping, living entity so deep that not even light could escape. I reached for it. Then, suddenly, something was pulling me back, dragging me away from the dark emptiness of that deep black. Come on, sweetheart, Dad was murmuring, crouched in front of me, hands on my shoulders. I could feel the chakra flowing through them, but it seemed muted, somehow. Back up. That's a good girl. Best not to go so fast, I blinked slowly. Once, twice, and again. The world seemed far less bright, less sharp than usual, as though I was looking through fog. It seemed almost distant, like everything was a long way away. Like I was looking through a tunnel or a telescope. Shikamaru asked, voice sharp. I heard it clearly and yet. Don't fuss, brother mine, I said, though my voice sounded bland and lacking inflection, even to me. Vaguely, I was aware that that should have worried me. It didn't. That should have worried me too. What's wrong with her? Shikamaru demanded. Dad cast him a look. She went too far. Now do you see why this is so dangerous? Shikamaru swallowed. But she'll be okay, right? He looked worried. I felt a small spark of regret, deep inside, at causing him worry. I feel very cold, I observed, but it was a distant concern, as though everything was so very far away. I think that's enough for tonight, Dad said. It'll probably take you a few days to unwind a bit. The sea has neither meaning nor pity. Anton Chekhov. I blinked awake slowly. Sunlight was streaming in through the window, creeping warm fingers over my bed. Usually I was up and gone before the angle of light got that far. I didn't move. The warmth was distant. I knew it was there, could feel it on my skin, and yet, inside I still felt cold. It didn't touch me. Shikako, wake up. You're missing breakfast. My door banged open, Mum standing poised in the doorway. I turned my neck to look at her. Oh, you are awake. She sounded unnerved. There was an awkward pause before she drew herself back together. Well, what are you waiting for? Hurry up. I stood and dressed and pulled my hair back into its usual play. The movements felt mechanical and awkward. Is this what it means? The consequences of mistakes when using the shadow jutsu had been highlighted, but no one had ever described how it felt. This empty, distant feeling. Quietude. Listlessness. Anime and manga. Like standing in shadow. I drifted downstairs. Finally, Shikamaru said, glancing up at me. Why'd you get to sleep in? I've already been up to feed the deer. I took my seat at the table. I didn't feel hungry, but this was routine and I could see no reason to change it. You should have woken me. I would have helped, I replied. There was no difference at the thought of waking earlier or later, doing work or doing nothing. It just barely mattered. Shikamaru's face faded into an uneasy look. I tried to smile at him, but my facial muscles felt stiff and uncooperative. Best if you don't do anything until you're back to normal, Dad said gently. No training, no ninja techniques, no wandering off on your own. At least for today. I tilted my head to the side. I was intending to visit Sasuke today, I said. It had been 3 days since my last visit. That's not really a good idea, Mum said. I'm sure it won't matter if you miss a visit or two. I shrugged one shoulder. It wouldn't, not exactly. I was aware, though, that Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke would probably be concerned, as they would be expecting me. Anime and manga. Why don't you go with Shikamaru? Mum suggested to fill the silence. And go and see Choji or Ino or something. I blinked. Aren't you training this morning? I asked. Dad did just say you couldn't, Shikamaru replied. That doesn't mean you can't, I responded. And you are the one with a match coming up. I could think perfectly well, and reason things out logically. I could act and react. I could move. I wasn't any different. Except, everything seemed so distant, so muted, so unimportant. Smothered, maybe. Suffocated. You won't get bored? Shikamaru asked dubiously. Just watching. No, I said. Boredom. That implied the desire for other actions. And while I was aware that that should have been a reaction to being forbidden to pursue my normal activities, it wasn't an issue right now. If you say so, Shikamaru muttered. Oh, for God's sake. Mum shouted suddenly, banging her fist on the table and half standing. How can you just act like this is normal? Shikamaru jerked, eyes flaring wide open with shock and panic. He sat very still, so as not to attract her attention. Yoshino, Dad said, don't get so upset. Don't get so upset. Don't get so upset. Your daughter is acting like, her hand cut through the air sharply. Like a machine. Why are you not upset? You know there are dangers to using our clan techniques, he said. This is one of them. Manipulating your own spiritual energy is not done lightly, or easily. There are risks involved. You're very wrong if you think I'm taking this casually. But there was no harm done. Yes, you can irreparably damage yourself like that, but this is just a temporary state, like a fever, while her spiritual energy sorts itself back out. I was watching them, Yoshino, I wouldn't, his voice faltered, just very briefly. I wouldn't let anything happen to them. Mum deflated like he'd taken the wind out of her sails. In a way, he had. For all her temper, Dad was very good at diffusing her. I worry about them enough when they're on missions, she sighed. I don't want to have to worry about them when they're sitting right in front of me. They're good kids, Yoshi, Dad said gently. They can take care of themselves. She slumped forwards, just a little, then marshaled herself. Not with that taijutsu. They can't, she decreed, waving a spoon in Shikamaru's direction. Ah, not taijutsu, Shikamaru whined. Taijutsu was his least favorite of all the shinobi arts and he preferred to avoid it as much as possible. I suspected that was because it demanded a large amount of movement. Dad leaned back in his chair, watching the argument with a fond smile gracing his lips. He caught my eye and it turned a little sad, but remained all the same. I nodded, then got up and followed Mum and Shikamaru out the door, seating myself on the veranda to watch them train. I suppose, another word for how I felt might be, peaceful. Come on, Shikamaru said when they were done, yawning and slouching. He wasn't quite looking at me. I'm meeting Asuma-sensei and Choji at the barbecue place. I nodded and stood. Shikamaru reached out and grabbed my hand, lacing our fingers together. It wasn't uncommon, but usually I was the one to do it so I could better tug him along. He didn't look at me, Didn't give any indication that it was out of the ordinary for him to do, just started walking. Anime and manga. I followed. The barbecue place had a name, but since it was one of Choji's favorite eateries and pretty much the most common place for Team 10 to meet, it was just the barbecue place. They all knew where they were talking about. Hey, Shikamaru. Choji's cheerful voice called as we entered the building. You're late. Even Ino is here, already. Sorry, Shikamaru drawled, heading for the booth where his team was. Something came up. Hope you guys don't mind that I brought my sister with me. Ino's head popped up over the edge of the booth. Shikako. Boy, am I glad to see you. Maybe between the two of us we can convince Choji to switch out some of the pork for salad, nay. Ino, I said, nodding my head in greeting. Choji. Even with such a small greeting, they were looking at me oddly as Shikamaru nudged me into the booth. Asuma-sensei's eyes were alert. As a ninja, we were always cautious of people who had suddenly changed. Imposters, breakdowns, there were a whole host of reasons why it might be a bad sign. Asuma-sensei didn't know me, but Ino and Choji did, and he was observing their reactions. All right there, Asuma-sensei asked casually, but his eyes were watching us sharply. I had an accident in training, I said placidly. It was the truth, more or less. Yeah, Shikamaru drawled uneasily. I was sorry that my actions, my words, were causing him discomfort. Dad says she's on lockdown for a while. No training. So, he shrugged. A training accident? Ino asked speculatively. That sucks. Those can really mess up your whole day. I'd considered that the Yamanaka and Nara Jutsu were more closely related than previously thought, but I still wasn't sure I wanted to know what kind of training accident could result from the mind-body switch jutsu. Yeah, that sucks, Choji empathized. Want some barbecue? In Choji's world, things improved with food. It wasn't so much a change of topic as an offer to help. Breakfast had been hours ago and I could smell the cooking meat on the hot plate, but I didn't feel particularly hungry. You should eat, Shikamaru said, nudging the chopsticks by my hand. Obediently, I picked them up. The movements were soothing and repetitive. Reach, grab, move, chew. Reach, grab, move, chew. The motions were identical each time. Exact and efficient. She's not going to stay like this, is she? I heard Choji asking quietly. I hope not, Shikamaru replied. Ino did what she does best and started chattering, about the new flowers they'd got in, about the people that had stopped by the flower shop recently, about juicy pieces of gossip she'd picked up. And Lee, you remember him? They're saying that his career as a shinobi is over. That he did himself so much damage with the gates that he'll never fight again. Her mouth twisted down, voice taking a more somber tone. That's really sad, isn't it? I mean, it's not like we knew him, or anything, but he seemed so determined. I visited him at the hospital, I said. He's always out in the practice fields. It frustrates the nurses. Someone like that isn't going to give up just because things are painful, Asuma-sensei said. It was a little prod at his team, who were more likely to give up than fight. Anime and manga, Shikamaru scoffed and rested his chin in his hand. And sometimes knowing where your limits are is more important. Yes, I agreed quietly. Moderation, that's the key, Asuma-sensei said with the tone of someone imparting great and sage knowledge. Too much of one, too much of the other, it's equally as bad. Yeah, whatever, Shikamaru replied, completely unimpressed in the way only teenagers can be. Maybe you should moderate your cigarettes then, Ino suggested. Or stop them altogether, that would be much better. His hand hovered protectively over his flak jacket pocket, presumably where he kept his cigarettes. When you kids get to Junin, you can tell me to back off the cigarettes then. Can't guarantee I'll listen, but I think you'll have other things to worry about by then. I would hope Kurenai-sensei would have you weaned off them by then, Ino said. What? What's she got to do with this? Asuma-sensei yelped. Ino giggled. You're dating, aren't you? Ino kept up with the gossip. Something like that would not slip past her. You should give her some flowers. We have some nice roses in at the moment. Red, ooh, or maybe some lovely white ones. Red for passion and true love, or white for eternal love, purity and secrecy. Together they spoke of unity. Ino was meddling. Asuma-sensei took out another cigarette and pointed it at her severely. We are just friends, he said firmly. So get that idea out of your head. You can give friends flowers too, Ino said sagely, not at all put off. Yellow roses stand for friendship and joy. Keep that up and I'll come up with new drills for you, Asuma-sensei warned. Something involving running. Lots of it. Ino huffed. Geez, don't get so touchy. I think it's sweet. Thank you for your approval, Asuma-sensei said dryly. And moving on. Man, that was good barbecue, Choji said, almost on cue. I am so ready for training. Are you coming with us, Shikako? I am not supposed to be alone, I said, which was confirmation in its own way. The next day was better, in a way. I was aware enough of how I was feeling to know it was abnormal, a degree of self-reflection that I hadn't had before. It ached, like feeling alone in a crowd, like being separated from the outside world by a glass wall. It would have been a good time to see if, without my emotions clouding my mind, I could think clearer, learn better, but I found my motivation lacking. Without my fear of the future, the desire to protect my family, it just seemed so pointless. Emotions made you what you were. Better today? Dad asked, sitting beside me on the veranda as we watched Shika and Mum spar. He cradled a cup of green tea between his hands. I hummed in agreement. I think I see why no one strives for this state, I said. Some do, Dad admitted. When you're older, have been through more, you'll probably see the attraction. But it's a hard balance to find. Just enough to shock you, not enough to harm you, and most outcomes are much worse than the things that could drive you there. It's not a good coping mechanism. I see, I said. Dad sipped his tea. Have you got anything planned for the day? I considered it. My motivation for training was low, but I could read. I had plenty of fiction books and some of what I was learning was interesting beyond its usefulness anyway. I could go and visit Hinata and Sakura. Dad looked pleased at the suggestion. It's good that you're reaching out to your friends. That's a good sign. I smiled, and it felt less stiff and awkward than before, though still unnatural. I could go visit Sasuke, I added. He regarded me closely. Do you think that's a good idea? He asked. It's not that far away and the route is fairly safe, I said. I want to train with them, but I know they'll be worried. And the fact that I didn't want them to be worried meant that I was getting better. Dad nodded. All right, stay safe. I will. The trip out was easy, mindless running along a familiar path. It took me longer than usual because I stuck to the ground rather than going through the trees, obeying the no ninja techniques rule. Martial arts. They must have noticed me coming because both Sasuke and Kakashi-sensei were waiting when I showed up. It's been more than 3 days. I thought something had happened, Sasuke said, relief seeping into his voice. It wasn't much, but it was noticeable. I apologize, I said. It was not my intention to cause you worry. His eyes sharpened, roving over my face. Are you okay? Kakashi-sensei was frowning, or as much as I could tell. I tilted my head slightly. I am uninjured. I suffered an accident in training which rendered me incapable of traveling here. Sasuke hesitated still. What's Team 7 Rule 1? I blinked slowly at the odd, out-of-place question. No dying, I answered. Perhaps he thought I was an imposter. Without someone here to vouch for me, it was a legitimate concern. The bridge was named the Great Naruto Bridge. Kakashi-sensei gave us the bell test, we started with a heaven scroll, Okay. I believe you, he said, glancing at Kakashi-sensei. I attempted a smile. I brought lunch, I offered. Sasuke took the bag carefully and we all sat. I ate mechanically. So, what happened? He asked eventually, breaking the stiff silence. I considered what to say. By rights, it was a clan secret and I shouldn't say anything more. On the other hand, this was my team and there were parallels. How much can I explain without giving anything away? There's a lot of debate about what concepts like mind, and soul, and mental energy really mean, but everyone agrees that they're influenced by chakra. So if something is affecting your chakra, it's affecting you. Your mind, your soul, your core personality, whatever it is that makes you, you, I said at length, trying to explain without actually explaining. And so, some techniques are dangerous to learn. Not just physically, but, I pressed my hand to my heart. Sasuke froze, chopsticks suspended halfway to his mouth. What? He rasped. I noticed that Kakashi-sensei had sharpened his attention. When you gaze into the abyss gazes into you. When you step into the shadow steps into you. If you push too far, too fast, if you aren't absolutely sure of who you are, and it will swallow you whole. Then you can lose pieces of yourself. Sasuke swallowed heavily, eyes darting around my face. We call it falling into the black, I continued. And you, he trailed off, unable to complete the thought. This is only temporary, I said, trying to reassure him. I'm much better today than I was yesterday. Next time you see me, I should be back to normal. That's good, right? He asked. I nodded. This state is unsuited to being a ninja. Martial arts. Why? Sasuke asked. You'd think. He looked at me uneasily. You'd think being emotionless is a state to strive for, I knew he meant to say. I stared blindly into my bento. I am not hungry, so I will not eat. I am not tired, so I will not sleep. I am not afraid, so I will not fight. Motivation is difficult. It was only routines that meant I had so far, the fact that others around me were doing so. That wouldn't matter to some, Kakashi-sensei said, almost to himself. As long as a soldier followed orders. Why should I follow orders? I countered, voice low. There is no reason for it. Punishment for disobeying. To protect people. For the village. Meaningless. Kakashi-sensei shook himself. So this is temporary? He asked. I nodded. Yes. I will be more careful next time. And yes, after that, Shikamaru and I were much more careful when training with our affinities. To live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. Friedrich Nietzsche. I clicked the pawn down onto the shogi board, completing my Yagura castle, arguably the strongest defensive formation in the entire game. Contrary to expectations, the opening game of shogi revolved around building a good defense before you could attack, mainly because of the ability to drop tiles at any location on the board. Rapidly advancing your pieces left you open for attack. Defend the king with 3 generals, Shikamaru quoted the old proverb with a sigh. Oh man. And here I thought we were going to have an easy game. Despite his tone, his eyes were eager as he advanced his rook's knight. It's not like we don't have the time, I replied, gaze flickering to the hospital bed that we sat beside. Naruto's been out for days already. The idiot. Maybe the kid croaked, Shikamaru suggested. I scoffed. It'll take more than chakra exhaustion to take out Naruto. Though I seriously want to hear the story of how Naruto got chakra exhaustion. And really, to get chakra exhaustion so close to the finals. Shikamaru shrugged. Hey, you're the one who told me about the rumors you heard. I know nothing about it. How could you miss the giant toad leaping around on the horizon? I shook my head. Never mind, you were probably cloud watching. You don't tell Mum. I don't tell Mum, he replied. Tell her what? I teased. That you're skiving training to play shogi with me in the hospital. Hey, my training buddy is here too. I can't do much without Choji. Sure, I said. I'm sure Asuma-sensei couldn't come up with anything. Naruto groaned and stirred. Seriously? Shikamaru asked rhetorically. You've been out for days and you pick now to wake up. He scowled at the shogi board. Where am I? Naruto muttered, sounding lost and disorientated. What is this? The hospital, Shikamaru replied drolly. They said you've been out cold like this for 3 days straight. Naruto blinked and sat up, scrubbing his eyes. Huh. Nice to see you awake, sleepyhead, I teased. I thought you were going to miss the finals. Wait, what? How many days did you say it had been? Naruto shouted, jumping up on the bed. Oh man, this kid gives me such a headache. I liked him a lot better when he was in a coma, Shikamaru muttered, leaning back in his chair. Naruto, calm down, I directed, ignoring my brother's comment. You've still got a few days. I need to be out there training. Naruto said, I can't believe I wasted so much time. Would you knock it off? Shikamaru said, exasperated. Now listen, you don't want to be freaking out the day before a big competition. Resting can be the best thing. You don't want to be tired before your fight with Neji, do you? I added, trying to reinforce the point. I guess not, Naruto muttered, sinking back down on the bed. I'm really starving. I rolled my eyes. Well, Shikamaru drawled, setting a fruit basket on the bed. I went to all the trouble of getting this stuff for Choji, and then the doctors told me he couldn't have it. That's such a drag, but at least we can eat it. Choji, you mean he's here in the hospital too? Naruto asked, wide-eyed. Nothing to worry about. All he's got is a bad case of indigestion. He ate one short rib too many. It was said in good humor. A kind of, that's Choji. He, Naruto giggled. That's just like him. He reached out to pick up an apple then froze, a wicked grin lighting up his face. I know, we can totally go and eat it in front of him. It'll drive him crazy. That's so mean, Shikamaru said. I like it. When he bothered to use it, Shikamaru's sense of humor leaned more to the sharp, sly kind. He had actually laughed at most of Naruto's pranks at the academy, even if he hadn't been as loud as Kiba about it. It's this way, Shikamaru said, leading us through the hallways. But as we drew nearer to Choji's room, I became unsettled. It's awfully quiet, I commented uneasily. It is lunchtime, Shikamaru commented, but I noticed that his shoulders were equally tense. I reached out with my chakra sense, momentarily bewildered at the fluctuations of chakra from the various medical seal work and machinery. I didn't quite know what I was looking for, but I found it in the dark, agitated chakra coming from one of the far rooms. Lee's room. I sprinted down the hallways, Shikamaru and Naruto blinking in surprise before following me. I didn't know what was happening, but it couldn't be good. Because I was pretty sure the chakra I was sensing was Gaara. I skidded around the corner, banging the door open and charging into the room, Naruto and Shikamaru half a step behind me. It probably would have been horribly embarrassing if I'd judged the situation wrong, but by the way that Gaara's sand was climbing all over the bed and the sleeping Lee, I didn't think I had. Shika and I both lashed out with our shadows, catching Gaara at almost the same time. It was the oddest feeling. We'd never both targeted the same person because, well, there wasn't any point to it. I could feel Gaara through it, and he was appropriately paralyzed, but I could also feel the link back to Shikamaru, and I knew that if I pushed, I could try and paralyze him too. Of course, he'd be able to do the same to me, and in the end it would probably come down to who had stronger chakra and greater will. But Gaara was torn between us, fighting a double layer of shadow possession jutsu. That would, however, last only as long as we were in sync with each other. If I moved and Shikamaru didn't, we'd be weakening each other. Interesting. My hand. I can't move my hand, Gaara rasped, hand poised over Lee's bed in the half-curled fist that he used for his sand coffin. With an awareness born from years of closeness, Shikamaru and I both turned, moving Gaara away from the bed to face us. What the heck do you think you're doing in here, you rat? Naruto shouted, half questioning, half demanding. Is there a problem here, Gaara of the desert? I sort of wished he had a last name. That didn't sound nearly as authoritative as it could have. Use of chakra techniques is prohibited in the hospital. Shika gave me a look like, it's pretty damn obvious he was trying to kill him. You think tell him it's forbidden is going to work? Well, okay, no. But I wasn't good at verbal confrontations. And reminding Gaara that there were people other than us that wouldn't like this might have done something. I was going to kill him, Gaara said, blankly, calmly, like he had every right. The statement made us all reel. You already beat him once in the competition, Shikamaru retorted. What's your problem? Wasn't that enough for you? Do you have some kind of personal grudge against him or something? There was a hard edge of anger in his voice that didn't show up often. I have nothing against him. It's nothing that complicated. I simply want to kill him, that's all. Again, said so calmly. His green eyes were blank. Admittedly, it was probably better than homicidal rage, but disturbing all the same. You think we're just going to stand by and let you do whatever you want? Shikamaru asked in disbelief. Not going to happen. If you don't stay out of my way, Gaara replied. I'll have to kill you as well. I felt my breath catch. Oh, I'd studied Gaara's attacks and defense. I'd worked out battle strategies. But this was not an ideal location for fighting. A small enclosed space, helpless patience. Naruto wasn't armed in any way, he wasn't even wearing shoes. I wasn't carrying my specially prepared water scrolls, it was not looking good. Oh, yeah, well let's just see you try it. Naruto challenged. On one hand I wanted to face palm, on the other it was so Naruto that I had been expecting it. Yeah, we watched your last match against Lee. We know you're tough. But we have a few tricks up our sleeves as well. On top of that, it's 3 against 1. So don't be a fool, okay? Just take my advice and go. Quietly. Shikamaru was bluffing. He wasn't any keener to get into a fight here than I was. Against a normal, sane person, it might have even worked. I'll say it once more, Gaara repeated. If you get in my way, I'll kill you. And I'll say it again, Naruto repeated, equally fierce. Let's see you try it. Back off. Shikamaru hissed at him, not as used to Naruto jumping in over his head, feet first and whooping with joy, as I was. We don't wanna go there. This guy fights like he's mad. Like he's a demon or something. An odd look came over Naruto's face. He can act like a demon if he wants to, but you know what? I got the real thing inside of me. He glared at Gaara. I was surprised at even the oblique reference. Maybe that was an opening I could use to talk about it. Later. A demon? Huh, my demon is as real as yours is, Gaara rasped. From my birth, my upbringing was not what most people would consider a happy one. In order to ensure I became the strongest of shinobi, my father infused my unborn self with a sand spirit. I destroyed the life of the woman who gave birth to me. I was born a monster. Its name is Shukaku and it's the living incarnation of a monk of the sand village who had been sealed up in a jar of tea. Shukaku, yes. Monk, no. Then again, why tell the Jinchuriki the truth? Not like it would help them stay in control or anything, right? That's awful, I said. Man, that's creepy, Shikamaru said, shuddering. Gee, what a swell guy your dad must have been. He really must have loved you a lot. You speak of love. Don't measure me by your standards. Love. Family. The only emotional ties I have to my family are the ones I like to wrap around their necks. And they're only ties of hate. Given life by the death of my mother and nurtured into being, I was the salvation of my village. I was the Cage's child. My father taught me the innermost secrets of the shinobi. He pampered and protected me and left me to myself. For a time, I thought that was love. And that was when everything started. Maybe Gaara really wanted to tell people about this, to justify himself. He was really monologuing here. When what started? Naruto demanded, swallowing. His face was pale. He was obviously seeing parallels here. Ever since I became 6 years old, my father tried to destroy me more times than I can count. You just finished saying how your father pampered and protected you. So which is it? Shikamaru demanded. Those who become too strong are apt to become feared. The jutsu that gave me birth had unbalanced something in my mind. Even the fools in my village realized I had emotional problems. His voice twisted on the last words, wry and bitter and full of dark humor. Depending on what Gaara meant by innermost secrets of the shinobi, it might not be just the Aikibi's fault. I doubted the Cage taught kindly. My father, the Cage, created me as his ultimate weapon. But I eventually became a threat to the very village I was meant to save. By the time I was 6, I became a figure of terror to the villagers. To them, I was a relic of the past that they wished would disappear. So you see, I had failed at the one purpose for which I was given life. What then was left for me in this existence? Why go on living? For a long time, I couldn't find an answer to that, but in order to live, you need a purpose. To exist for no reason, it's the same as being dead. It was spellbinding, listening to him talk. Horrible and awful, and still managing to hold us entranced. Then in time, the answer came to me. To put it simply, my reason for living is in the killing of others. For years, I lived in fear of those who were sent to murder me. But now I am at peace. I killed many would-be assassins, and it was while I was doing it that the truth was made clear to me. I live solely for myself. I love only myself. As it was the death of my mother that gave me life, so it is the death of others that sustains me. It makes me almost happy to be alive. And there's no end to it. As long as there are still people to kill in this great, wide, crowded world, I will never disappear. His eyes widened alarmingly, face twisting into a grimace of pain. Talking time was apparently over. Now, let me feel alive. Sand started to swirl around the room, rising into the air. He wasn't moving, wasn't using hand signs, but the sand still moved. Ooh, not good. I readied my chakra for a lightning jutsu, hoping that it would disperse the sand enough for us to retreat. Naruto wasn't moving, and Shikamaru didn't have much besides